Matt George, though, is a championship caliber reporter. We bring
Uh,
in our good buddy Matt George.
eh,
Locked On Kings podcast, ABC 10.
maybe conference finals, maybe
Nah.
division champion. We're working our way up. We're like the Kings. It's a slow build, but we're on the right track.
Championship all the way, buddy. Championship all the way. What do you think of the shakeup? I know you dropped the podcast about it. I didn't get an opportunity to listen just yet, but what did you think about the big shakeup in the NBA yesterday with Dame Lillard headed to the Milwaukee Bucks?
I love it. I love the deal. I love the Dame's heading to the East. I mean, I think it's a good deal for all parties. I mean, it makes sense for Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee can, if they end up losing Giannis, which they got 2 years left of him under contract, and then a 1 year player option on top of that. Dame's under contract for the next 2 years. So both these guys could walk at the exact same time, and Milwaukee could be left with nothing. But I think Milwaukee can put their head on their pillow at night knowing that, like, Giannis, we won a championship with you, number one, and then we got you the guy that you wanted. Like, we did our job. If you walk away, that's on you at this point. We would love to keep you. You're our guy. But we can rest easy knowing that we at least did our job. And I don't think anybody can turn their nose up at Milwaukee and say you wasted Giannis's time or you didn't do enough, because clearly they're going for it. I think it makes a lot of sense for Dame. I think Portland did a phenomenal job by Dame. He didn't get exactly what he wanted with Miami, but he still got a championship contender out East. I'd argue he's in a better position with Giannis in Milwaukee than he ever would have been with the Miami Heat, given what they probably would have had to have given up. And I give Portland a ton of credit too. That look, like they were getting strong armed by media, they were getting strong armed by big market Miami, and they stuck with it. And who knows what deals from Miami they turned down, but regardless, they got a good job or good deal for them. They can still flip Drew for more, which they're going to. I think this was a win for two small market teams that ended up being the main players in this big deal too. So overall, I think it's one of those trades that we'll see how it plays out, and one team's probably going to lose more than another. But it made sense pretty much for all parties. The Suns just kind of worked their way in there for the hell of it. Yusuf Nurkic being the main piece they got back. Okay, I don't think that's going to really move the needle with the rest of the stars in that city and on that team. But like, I think it was a fun deal. It was a fun day in the NBA.
It was. Let's start with Portland. We'll go through some of these different teams and talk about them because ultimately we're going to end up talking about Sacramento as training camp gets underway here, Matt, in just a couple of days. But let's start with Portland. You said you liked it for all three teams. I love the idea of them not trading for a bunch of draft picks. And that was one of the reports that we saw today that people had a strong reaction to. See, they just didn't want to trade him to Miami when they found out there was an offer, or allegedly there was an offer of Tyler Hero and 3 first-round picks. Given what we know about the makeup of the Portland Trailblazers and the fact that they would have had to move on from Tyler Hero immediately, and given what we learned, and I learned this from Shams Charania, I'm not sure where else it was reported, but the fact that the Yusuf Nurkic, DeAndre Ayton deal was essentially separate. It was all tied together, but that deal between those two teams had already been worked out, or at least the framework of that deal had already been worked out. I love the idea that Portland was like, we don't really need 3 more 18-year-olds to join this group right here. We need guys who can play ball. We need guys who can help, and we need ones who can help immediately.
See, regarding the draft picks, I actually didn't think of it that way. I thought of it from the way from this felt like the trade market balancing out again a little bit. Like after the ridiculousness of like that Timberwolves trade with the amount of picks that have been traded, and like just recently for star trades, you've just seen these treasure trove of picks that I think have just completely thrown off the market. This to me was balancing it out a little bit more. Yeah, you can acquire a star. It's going to cost you pieces, but you're not going to have to handicap and hamstring your franchise for the next decade in order to do it. And on top of that, the team that's actually trading the piece away can get players that we're going to actually see and be able to remember that they were involved in the trade and not referenced in 2034 when it's like, and this is the last pick of the Damian Lillard trade back in the day. Half of you are probably still or half of you are probably dead. Like it's one of those things. Like I'm glad that the market kind of came back. And then the Portland perspective, I didn't even think about, because they've got Scoot, they've got Shaden, they've got still other young pieces there. Like, why would they be interested in adding an 18-year-old 2 years from now, in addition to the draft pick that they already have, the other 18 to 20-year-old that they already have 2 years from now? By that point, by the time these picks theoretically would convey from Miami, The Trailblazers are hoping they're a perennial playoff team again, led by the core that they've built for themselves. So I think Portland again did a really, really good job to get essentially what they wanted. I'm not the biggest fan of DeAndre Ayton necessarily, but a scoring big who you can put in the pick and roll immediately with Scoot and have Shaden Sharp play off of as well. And DeAndre, here you go. If you want to, you didn't like your role in Phoenix, come to Portland, where at least for the first year, you're going to get as many touches as you want. Like wins across the board to me.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. I think one thing to really watch as it pertains to like teams and draft picks is how this all shakes out with Oklahoma City. Now you could argue, well, Oklahoma City is on a tremendous pace, right? They're clearly on the uptick. They're a team that a lot of us, including me, will be watching on League Pass. Like that's a team I'm interested in. But if we're being fair to the conversation, and for me, Chet's a big reason why. But if we're being truly fair to the conversation, one of the big reasons, not one of, the biggest reason Oklahoma City is in the position they're in is because of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yep.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wasn't a guy that they drafted through a pick that they acquired. That was the centerpiece of the deal for Paul George. That, from what we understand, the Clippers fought tooth and nail, but recognized there was no other option in order for them to do what they wanted to do that offseason. So how this next 4 years, 6 years stretch out for Oklahoma City could really go a long way in determining, yeah, this idea of acquiring a billion draft picks isn't going to work.
Yeah, I think they're towing a fine line that could end up biting them in the ass to where they might be Danny Ainge Boston 2.0, to where I think the biggest asset or reason to have all these picks, if you're in a position like OKC where you're on the cusp of being good and obviously want to get great behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is you can package all those picks and middle of the line talent to probably go out and get a star. Well, that's great in theory, but are you going to actually do it? Are you going to actually be able to? Are you going to actually pull the trigger? Like we could get 3-4 years from now where half of these picks are conveying or starting to convey, and Presti and OKC haven't done anything with them yet because the right deal hasn't been there for them. And then suddenly, again, we're talking about them the same way we're talking about like Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics, where it's like, well, we could do this. We wanted to do this, but it never got done. Ultimately, you're judged on what you do or don't do. And I promise you, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not going to sit there and patiently wait for 6 of these picks to turn into talent to help him win. By that point, he's at the tail end of his career, or he's bounced long before that. So, like, pressure is going to be on OKC here pretty quickly. They're kind of the cool, fun story that could. And I think OKC is going to have the season this year that the Kings had last year in terms of not so much of a surprise explosion, but I think they're going to be a great story. I think the OKC Thunder might end up being one of the best stories, if not the best story in the NBA. They're already loaded with talent. Now you add Chet back into the fold. Like, I think that Thunder team is going to be really good and really fun. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them vault themselves right into the playoff picture and skip the play-in altogether. So maybe that's what they enjoyed this season. And then the pressure becomes, now where do you go from there? Kind of similar to the pressure that's on the Sacramento Kings right now, in a different sense. So, I mean, OKC's got some decisions to make going forward. It's always good to have assets, but if you're printing money, you got to spend it on something.
I was low key fire right there. Oklahoma City in the top 6. I like it. You heard it here first. Not that they were stunningly far away, but Matt, if you listen to those who cover the league, I don't know if you've heard this yet, Matt. The West, and I quote, is loaded. It's one of the many reasons Sacramento isn't going to be as good as they were last year.
Oh, man.
See, the Kings were really lucky last year, Matt, to be healthy. And they were really lucky that every single team in the West wasn't. So now, this year, where everyone is magically going to be healthy, the Kings aren't going to be good anymore. So it must be Sacramento that you have out of the top 6, and Oklahoma City and the rest of the healthy teams up there in the playoff spot.
I nearly popped a blood vessel earlier this week because I identified the 3 most common new talking point reasons for why the Kings aren't going to succeed this year or why they're going to regress. You hit on one of them. It has nothing to do with the Kings. It has everything to do with the West, because all these teams that are adding talent who's never played together before, plus are loaded with 32, 33, 34-year-olds who are naturally injury prone. All those teams are going to get better, but not the organization that now has spent, not a roster that has now spent a calendar year together, not Mike Brown in year 2 with the entire
No.
coaching staff still intact. They can't possibly get better. But those aren't even the most egregious ones. At least those, like, you're not even trying to argue against the Kings. You're more just trying to argue for other opponents. The other two that blow my mind is the injury luck from last season, and just how short-sighted, and like, people who build that argument against the Sacramento Kings that they won't be able to replicate last season because they won't be able to stay as healthy, didn't watch Sacramento Kings basketball until the playoffs. And even that's not an excuse, because in the playoffs, Domantas Sabonis was playing hurt and De'Aaron Fox broke his index finger, but that still wasn't enough. You go back to the regular season when Domantas Sabonis hurt his hand and his thumb in like December. An injury initially when it happened, we were questioning whether or not Domas was going to have to miss extended time because he needed surgery. Keegan Murray played through injuries. De'Aaron Fox has played through injuries every single season of his career to this point. He's battled through and played banged up, and that just comes from how physical of a guard that he is. So instead of saying the Sacramento Kings were lucky, how about we call it like it is? How about the Sacramento Kings are tough, and their stars don't need to sit and bitch and moan and worry about load management and only play 65 games. They can actually play through injury. They can actually fight their way through a regular season because they know their team needs them in order to accomplish that. How about we look at it that way? How about we admire the Kings training staff? Or we admire that this organization didn't protect and wrap these guys in bubble wrap. Mike Brown had them practicing harder and more than any other team in the league, and they were still able to battle through the injuries that they were battling through. That should be credit towards the Sacramento Kings, not undermining them like so many talking heads are doing right now. And the other one was the lack of offseason moves, which apparently adding a EuroLeague MVP means nothing. Apparently adding a multiple-time NBA champion as a backup center means nothing. Apparently extending Domantas Sabonis now is a bad thing, even though everybody said the Kings needed to do that, or that Tyrese Halliburton trade was a terrible idea. So, I mean, everybody's just going to keep moving the goalposts and undermining what the Sacramento Kings are doing well, and that's fine. The Kings don't care. They'll continue to drop 120 on your ass and take those wins all the way to the bank.
Probably just end the show right there.
Sorry.
You sound a little pissed off.
I'm agitated right there. And you know what set me off, and it's in the best way. What set me off was the conversation you and James had on, I think it was Wednesday, because you guys were talking about it too. So it's your fault. You lit the powder keg, and I was listening to the two of you. I was like, damn it, I want in on this. So I cut a promo on a podcast.
No, I love it. And you just cut a promo here on this show, but there was nothing like off about what you said. And it's just kind of one of those things where, and it's weird how it works. Maybe it's because it's the first year. Maybe that's a part of it. But I pointed to the Memphis Grizzlies and how the Memphis Grizzlies kind of did what they did. Ja Morant, went from being a good player, a star, an all-star in the league, to like a superstar in the playoffs. And y'all might want to go take a peek at what De'Aaron Fox did last year in the playoffs. He emerged as a superstar.
Literally one of the best playoff debuts in history.
I'm of the belief he's going to do exactly what Ja did. Now, you have to take all the other Ja stuff out of it and look at him as a basketball player. Ja did just that. He carried that playoff performance into the next season and was a legitimate NBA superstar. It's exactly what I think is going to happen with De'Aaron Fox. And I think you talk about one of your points right there about the offseason and the lack of moves during the offseason is so many people who cover this league, and I think this is true for a lot of fans too, consider movement improvement. And who was it? We were talking about it earlier this week. I think it was Tim Bontemps and Tim McMahon, the Hoop Collective. They said that, I hope I'm wrong, but the Kings, they're not going to be as good as they were last year. And part of it was they didn't do anything in this offseason. They could have gotten better. And this was the line that got me, Matt. They could have gotten better this offseason, but they chose not to. And I took that as like, okay, the Sacramento Kings had salary cap space. So in your mind, you believe they could have gotten better. How could they have gotten better? Well, they could have afforded Kyle Kuzma. Cool. Kyle Kuzma was going to come to Sacramento, be the third scoring option behind De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, potentially the fourth scoring option if you throw Keegan Murray in there. And he was going to do that. And the Kings were going to spend all of their money on him. They weren't going to be able to lock up Domas long term. They probably still could have gotten Sasha over, and then that kind of would have been the end of that. To you, that would have improved the Sacramento Kings because they spent cap space on someone you thought who would move around the league. Movement does not equal improvement, and that's what these dudes are hung up on. Chris Duarte, as you said, Sasha Vezenkov, those were on-point moves and very clearly something they haven't been paying attention to. On-brand moves for Monty McNair in this front office.
Yeah, a couple things there. Number one, and I don't remember who it was specifically, so I won't say the name, but one of those two gentlemen, and it was one of the two of them, happened to be in the Golden One Center for Game 1 of the NBA playoffs and tweet out how they were underwhelmed by the reaction by the fans and things of that nature too.
I think that was Nate Duncan.
Oh, was that Nate Duncan? My apologies.
Because it's hard to forget. It was arguably the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
My apologies to the two of them then, because for some reason I thought it was one of them. But
no, that's a very Bontemps. That's a very Bontemps thing right there. But
regardless,
sure Nate Duncan,
whoever that is, the biggest wet blanket in the history of the NBA. But other than that, like essentially what I read from those thoughts and those takes, I guess I understand it, but I also understand that from the perspective of a national writer or a national journalist who's looking for fireworks to draw their attention. Like, I don't think necessarily they were looking for the Sacramento Kings to improve. I think they were looking for the Sacramento Kings to swing and probably miss. Like, that's what they're used to, is Kings swinging and missing. And this all goes back to people do not know how to cover and how to handle the Sacramento Kings being good. Like all the old talking points, all the low-hanging fruit of 16 plus seasons, not only is irrelevant now, it never applied to this group. So much so that even us in Sacramento were asking them, hey, playoff drought. And Kevin Herter would say, we don't care about it. Mike Brown would say, we don't care about it. Like, it's weird to think about. There are people on this Sacramento Kings roster that the majority of this roster knows nothing but winning in Sacramento. Isn't that crazy to say? Like, De'Aaron Fox, Harrison Barnes, they know what they did to get here. The front office knew what they did to get here. Mike Brown's known nothing but victories here.
Mike Brown, a winner. Yeah, Mike Brown just wins.
But he told me, he said that in an interview too. It's pinned on my Twitter. He said, I came to Sacramento because I came here to win. It's like, what a weird statement to hear a coach say, but he ended up being right. So, like, people wanted the Sacramento Kings to make moves and to make a swing to draw their attention. They didn't want the Sacramento Kings to improve. They wanted the Sacramento Kings to try for something. Mm-hmm. And I get it, but that move already happened. That move was the Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis trade that you just secured and cleaned up this offseason. So if anything, you're finally finishing up, again, everything that was held against you when you initially made that move. And hell, I said on the Locked On Kings podcast, I said, you have to convince Domantas Sabonis to re-sign in Sacramento, which now sounds easy based off the context of the year the Kings had. But before that context, we were terrified of, are the Sacramento Kings going to be able to convince a player of that caliber to stick around? Because typically they have not been able to. Yeah. So the Kings did their job. Monty McNair did his job. And on top of, if he had just signed Harrison Barnes, re-signed Harrison Barnes for the money that he did, and brought Domantas Sabonis back, I would have called that a successful offseason with the rest of the fringe being a question mark. The fact that you added a EuroLeague MVP, you added JaVale McGee, and you added Chris Duarte, who they got for next to nothing on top of that, like, how can anybody look at that and say that it wasn't a good offseason or the Sacramento Kings didn't improve? Oh, I know how, because they're not watching and paying attention to Kings basketball in the first place. And it's obvious.
Yeah, and the rule for that should be don't cover it. When Sacramento Kings come up on your rundown on NBA Today, hey, I can't talk about this. I ain't watched this team yet.
You know what you should do? Ask Mark Spears. Have him answer the question. He's the one paying attention. Ask Sam Amick. He's the one paying attention. Anthony Slater, at least, is paying attention.
I'm forbidden from talking to Sam Amick, but I can ask the Hall of Famer Mark Spears.
That's true.
About the Sacramento Kings, which we should probably do soon. We should have the Hall of Famer here on the show really soon. You mentioned all of the signings. One that I didn't mention, and I think might be my favorite, was the last signing. JaVale McGee.
JaVale McGee.
Just absolutely Love it.
Mm.
We talked about who would be, I mean, this dates back to last year. If for those that are old enough to remember the backup 5 saga of the 2022-2023 season, JaVale McGee was a name that often came up. He was in Dallas. It was like, what are they doing there? Does it make sense? Probably not. Once he gets, stretched, waved and stretched, it's like, oh, wait a minute. We've got something cooking here. And I love the signing. Absolutely love it.
What for what you were looking for the money you were able to spend at the backup center position, who in reality could end up just being a third string five because the expectation is Trey Lyles is probably going to play a lot of backup
Mhm.
five, right? But that's to be determined. What better option out there is there? And on top, like, and it's like a Billy Mays commercial. But wait, there's more. Like he brings this championship experience. He's been so many different places, including the Golden State Warriors, who, like it or not, the Kings and the Golden State Warriors play a very similar style and have a very similar model. They're not cut and paste, cut and dry the exact same thing, but they're cut from the same cloth. And JaVale McGee's familiar with how to win there. So he, like the experience that JaVale McGee brings, in addition to, hey, I need 15 minutes one night of rim protection, rebounding, and solid pick and roll threats. And then knock on wood, another night, hey, Sabonis, maybe you can actually afford to take a seat when you get stepped on in the chest or your thumb gets whacked. Hey, you can take a night off. JaVale McGee, you can hold things down. Like, it's hard to find more than what you asked for, which is why we didn't even need a training camp for the Kings to make that decision, right? As soon as JaVale McGee is signed, JaVale McGee's available. Mike Brown's like, yeah, there's no point. Like, give Noel his money, give Keita his money. We wish them the best. Keita, you go to Boston, you do you, baby, and best of luck to you. But we're good. We got our guys. And also, low key, like bringing Alex Len back and keeping Alex Len around is really solid too,
I
because
think
he's
so too.
reliable, he's consistent, he's very familiar with this Sacramento Kings team. He played solid minutes in the playoffs at times. He played solid minutes at the end of last season. He's not going to complain about his role at all. He's going to stay ready. He's going to play hard and he's going to play physical. He's a Mike Brown guy. So
Yeah.
having Alex Len the wings too, I'll take that.
And you know what I didn't think about initially, and I actually only thought about this within, recent days, is we know how strong Domantas Sabonis is and him being one of the strongest, players in the league. We also know that coaching staff they really pushed Domas. And who better to play against him than Alex Len?
Mm.
Alex Len, another really big, strong dude who can get down in the block and attempt to push him around, attempt to be the most physical player he plays with on a day-to-day basis, regardless of who their opponent is that night. Just as much as he can do with the Sacramento Kings, just as much as he showed what he could do with the Sacramento Kings at the tail end of last season, he could do just as much in being the guy who lines up across from, as if they're playing football, who lines up across from Domantas Sabonis at practice.
Well, to be fair, with how physical both of them play in the paint, it might look like a football game from time
It
to time
might,
too. And that's
yeah.
how both of them like to
And I
play.
think that's what the coaches want.
Yeah.
The coaches told us once, we want the most physicality Domas feels all night to be from us.
Mm.
That's why Doug and Roger, all those guys down there, that's why they beat the crap out of him.
Mm.
They want him to have the most physicality he has all night with his staff. That way, when whoever, and there's always exceptions to that, the Joe except, there's exceptions to that. But on most nights, easy work is done once Doug Christie and the rest of that crew go to the back and Domas goes to the free throw line.
I'm pretty sure that I don't know if it's been announced yet or not. I hope it's going to happen. The run renewing for a season 2, which is the behind the scenes videos that they did. And I hope like they focus heavily during this training camp time and preseason time just on the next stage, and in particular on his coaching staff. Now they've introduced us all to different coaches over the course of the run last season. I'm not talking about telling us more about the coaches. I want them to show what these coaches are doing. I want to see when Doug Christie is pulling Davion Mitchell aside, what are they talking about? When Mike Brown is chewing out everybody from the top of the roster to the bottom of the roster, what is he talking about? What is Jay Triano like? It's to me, it's going to be fascinating to watch, and it's really easy to romanticize like now that they've got a foundation underneath them of last season and knowing what they're capable of, and they have the complete buy-in, what can they accomplish this season now with that layer already on top? Like we're not talking Mike Brown winning coach of the year for the second year in a row. I think
Mhm.
magnificent stuff would have to happen for that. Like the Kings would have to be a 60 plus win team and a number one seed for that to even be a possibility. So I'm not expecting that. But that doesn't mean Mike Brown and his coaching staff can't still coach this team like a coach of the year. And I just think the coaching staff and this roster having the time to spend together. Like that's why I continue to hit this point home time and time and time again. The roster was that good already, and they haven't been together a calendar year yet. Come
Yeah.
Monday, it'll be a calendar year. Well, maybe not exactly, but come Monday, it'll be a calendar year that this group has been together. What can they accomplish in year two? That's what got me most fired up.
We'll come back. You said something about the coaching staff that I'm curious to ask you about. We did a nice job looking back. Let's look forward. Media day is Monday. Training camp is Tuesday. And the Kings will play basketball 1 week from Sunday. We'll talk about all that. Matt, kind enough to stick around this entire hour. We'll have much more ahead here. It's D'Lo and KC with our friend Matt George on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320. Oh, great stuff, man. You got everybody hyped.
You know,
Everybody fired up.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready. I'm just ready for people, the Kings to just shut some people up. Just shut people up. And I imagine that's how a lot of them feel. It's like, I imagine that's how Domas has been feeling all summer. Like I've been reading all the crap that's been said. The last thing that he experienced was Draymond Green walking off the floor saying, "I don't respect you." Like I can't wait. These guys are gonna have such a chip on their shoulder already. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hope that's true. I hope they go in with an attitude. If you're watching on YouTube, go to the Odyssey app, go to 1025 on your phone, and just turn the volume down. I'll get credit for that. I'm on 2 stations at the same time.
There you go.
Support both. I was looking to see what the 420. Oh, yeah, I forgot. It's Jeezy's birthday. That's good stuff right there. That is good stuff right there. All right.
Some dude from New Orleans just DM'd me on Twitter. He goes, "Hey Matt, I'm one of those people with lazy Kings takes. I think it would be a good conversation on my platform." Yeah, okay.
Huh.
I'm
Well,
ready.
that's certainly an approach.
I'm good.
Let's see.
I see people asking about SmackDown. I'm not going to be able to. Friday nights or high school football nights, I just can't get out, but I've wanted to so bad, man. I've never seen John Cena live, and I've wanted the opportunity to go see John Cena in
Oh,
person, and
good stuff.
I can't. Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, man, weekends for sports people just don't exist. Like we're at the events, we're working the events, so it's there's certainly worse things to be doing to make money, that's for sure. So don't feel bad for me. But when there's events, concerts, and stuff on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, it's a wrap.
Del Oro and Folsom?
No, our game of the week this week is Elk.
Corrigal?
No, Elk Grove
Gee,
at Davis. It's a Delta League
0
clash.
for 2. Okay.
Yeah, those are two massive games. The game of the week is voted on by people, and we also
Oh, got you.
we try not to just do SFL stuff because everybody knows those are massive games and stuff like that. But those
Yeah.
are the schools that are working hard, deserve some love.
Oh, that's good stuff.
So I will be at Davis High School tomorrow night, jamming down the causeway, listening to 102.5 on my way to the game. It'll be good.
Oh, that's nice. I don't believe you, but that's still very
Oh,
nice.
I do. I listen. I listen all the time.
Oh,
Yeah, of
thanks.
course I do. You're my afternoon drive time. I mean, our sports vehicles are old as hell, and we only
Well,
have
you
AM and
probably
FM
don't have a lot
radios.
of choices.
It's like AM and FM radio. It's like I know where I'm going. I'm either running it back or I'm going to 92 or 102.5.
1025 is off to a good start. It's so different because I don't have the interaction. I don't like with this show. Like I can see. Like I know yesterday was a big day. I expect Monday to be a big day, Tuesday to be a bigger day. I expect the following Monday to be a huge day. Like I can see that. On KSFM is you just hope.
Yeah.
You just hope. And then, the numbers come in and it's like, okay, that's good. And you hope and the numbers come in like, okay, that's good. But it's not the same.
I don't know how much time we have, but John, I see you. I haven't gotten out to a West Park game yet this year for game of the week, but they've been nominated a couple times. But are you by West Park? Is West Park your area?
Is it
Because
in
there's
Roseville?
yeah, I live right down the
Yeah,
street from West Park.
Matt doesn't live too far.
I,
John doesn't live too far from us at all.
oh, really? I'm right in
Mhm.
Crocker Ranch, man.
I drove John Bull home one time. He lives like if you didn't turn on my street from Blue Oaks and kept going, he lives down that way.
That West Park campus, man, that place is a college. That's not even
Is
a high
that
school.
the new one? Is that
Yes,
that's the brand new
it's
one? Okay.
nuts. It's a college. It's gorgeous. It's an incredible campus. Which it's the closest school to where I live now. Plus Wood Creek, my alma mater, is closer to where I live now. But as of right now, because Roseville High School is losing so many kids, I'm technically in Roseville's jurisdiction. So if my son were
Oh
to go to
yeah.
school today, he'd have to go to Roseville, which I would fight tooth and nail because I'm not a Tiger, number one, and number two, I'm not trying to drive across town.
I was driving my mom around on Saturday in the Rockland area and pull up on this campus. I was like, "Yo, what is?" My mom goes, "What is that?" I was like, "I have no idea." And I realized it was your alma mater. I had never driven by William Jessup before.
Let's go. It looks a lot nicer
Came
now
back.
than it did.
Yeah, it looks nice. Mm-mm. Back with our friend Matt George, the ABC 10 reporter. Just laid out all of the great work that he's got coming up this weekend. And of course, he's the host of the Locked On Kings podcast as we talk Kings basketball with camp coming up next week, media day on Monday, first practice on Tuesday, first game against the Raptors in Vancouver coming up on Sunday. Matt, I asked this question to no one in particular because I've been mostly by myself. And then I think I asked James one day this week. So I'm going to ask you everything we saw last year, um, everything that happened this offseason. You walk into training camp on Saturday. What's the first thing your eyes are drawn to?
Lineup pairings.
Who are you looking for?
Lineup pairings. That's the first thing. I'm hoping we're seeing scrimmages because I want to see what pairings Mike Brown is trying out. I really
Okay.
want to see like Sasha and Domas together. I want to see Sasha and Fox. I want to see Duarte and Domas. I just want to see pairings. I want to see Trey at the 4 with Sasha maybe at the 3. Or sorry, Trey at the 5 with Sasha maybe at the 4. Like I want to see what Mike Brown's trying out. Now we might get better glimpses of that in actual preseason games than we will in practice, but I'm very, very interested in lineup combinations. I'm hoping we get to see some actual scrimmage action, which I think training camp last year we saw 1 or 2 times. And most of the time we got like the free throw drills and individual work at the end of practice, which is pretty commonly what we get. So
Mhm.
Mike might not want to show us too much, but if I could be like a fly on the wall for anything to pay attention to, lineup combinations are top of my list.
Did he being Mike Brown, did he do two-a-days last year?
I think so. I
Okay.
remember.
That's what I
Yeah, I
remember.
think he did.
All right. How do you think you brought up the coaching staff a few minutes ago? Do you think with this season playoff run under their belt, you just mentioned, we're, give or take, we're like a calendar year away, this team being together for a full year now. Do you think mainly Mike Brown, the coaching staff as a whole, we can frame it as the coaching staff as a whole, do you think they have a different approach this year than they did last year?
Um, yes, probably, but not like obviously not completely different. Obviously, not a complete refresh. I think it's just like we've established the foundation. We know that we can be as good as we set out to be. Last season proved it. I think Mike Brown and his coaching staff, if they weren't already, which I'm sure to some extent they were, I think there is going to be a championship level expectation that they hold to this group. And it's like, let's build let's build championship habits, whether it's individually or as a team, defensively, offensively. Like if the Kings are able to copy and paste and replicate much of what they did, and like I give the coaching staff the biggest area of credit that I give the coaching staff, and that's saying a lot because they deserve a lot of credit on all facets. But the fact that the Sacramento Kings were able to avoid extended losing streaks last season, I think like I had the number written down somewhere because I did it for a podcast talking about numbers, but the Kings won like 60% of games after a loss last season. Like it was really,
Mm,
really impressive. Like they, to me, like that's the biggest area of like appreciation I guess I have for the coaching staff. So it's continuing to keep those solid and keep those kind of that the foundation of what the Sacramento Kings did well last season the same, while adding on to it without taking away from the base. It's not like, okay, we're going to replace the way we played this way with now we're going to play this way. I'm sure there're going to be little tweaks and stuff like that, but it's a really convoluted way of answering your question. I think things are going to look different in terms of the expectations are going to be higher, and Mike Brown is going to ask and demand more. The coaching staff are going to ask and demand more. And I think that's what I mean. I know for a fact that's what De'Aaron Fox wants, and I think
mm.
this roster wants to be coached like they have the same championship expectations and aspirations as the Phoenix Suns and Milwaukee Bucks do.
That's what I was looking for, because I always get, pulled back to that moment after the Knicks game when the Kings win on national TV, and Mike is like, "Yeah, we got our ass kicked on the boards. We keep doing that, we'll absolutely be eliminated in the first round of the playoffs."
Mm.
Like we have to do better at that. Like I think about those moments and how they were kind of few and far. Like that was and we all agreed after it happened, that was the perfect time to pull the ripcord, if you will. Like
Mm.
it was flawless execution. Now you can't go, turn that around to calling your team out every time they do something you don't like publicly. Like but I did wonder if Mike gets a little bit more aggressive, whether it's privately or publicly, with the faults that this team might exhibit during games this year.
Last year, one of the major storylines around the beginning of the season and during training camp was the contract that Mike had his team sign, which is you're going to get this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to play, and you're going to give 110% to it. Sign this contract if you agree. And they had one that was up in the practice facility, and I think one that was up in the locker room, a copy of that contract all season long. That contract is still going to be there, but I think that contract is now the expectation, not the option. Like this is
Mm.
you all signed this, like, and those of you who are new, you better get on board or you're going to be sitting down and collecting a paycheck. But like the expectation is you're bought in now. The new contract is going to be you're going to give me everything you have to get better. And you're going to give me everything you have, and you're going to trust us to steer you in the right direction. But at the same time, too, like as the season went on, do you remember how much Mike was talking more and more about like I want to take myself out of the picture. Like he commented so much on how what Steve Kerr's done so well to build in Golden State is that at times Steve could barely be involved in a huddle, and it was Steph, Draymond, whoever it may be. They were kind of leading that. The accountability was there amongst the team. Mike wants to get to a position where he's doing less and getting less credit. Like that's what Mike wants. Mike doesn't care as much as it's great to be the coach of the year, first unanimous coach of the year. Like every time we'd ask Mike about it, he'd deflect it to somebody else's coaching staff. Hell, he even deflected it to the training staff at one point. Like he doesn't want that attention. He doesn't want that responsibility. He wants to be able to sit back, put his feet up, lean back, and watch this Kings team perform to the best of their abilities, and not have to use his timeouts to stop runs as much as he did last season, especially early on in the year. So the next level to me is now that there's the buy-in, it's a continued buy-in to doing the hard work that it takes to go from good to great, which he's talked about a lot, and then the leadership internally so that the coaching staff, they can be involved and teach and help where they can, but they can also sit back and let De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and the leaders of that team take control.
You mentioned Phoenix a minute ago. What did you think of Phoenix's part in yesterday's deal? Do you think that they got better? Anything spiced them up a little bit? Like, what did you think of their involvement?
The only thing I really paid attention to, and I might have missed something, but it was the Yusuf Nurkic acquisition, which was basically the main thing that they got back. And
Mhm.
Is Yusuf Nurkic better than and more talented than DeAndre Ayton? No. Do the Phoenix Suns need DeAndre Ayton? No. Do the Phoenix Suns need a center who's going to play their role, buy in completely, and follow the orders of Durant and Booker in particular, but also Beal and play their role? That's what they need. Yusuf Nurkic, I think, can do that, assuming he can stay healthy. So, yeah, like I think it was fine for Phoenix. I don't think it's that much of a needle mover. I think it's more important for their locker room than it is on the floor. And there's staying healthy is a question for multiple members of that roster. So I'm not worried about Yusuf Nurkic's health any more than I'm worried about Durant's or Booker's or anybody like that.
I thought they added a few. I thought they added a little more depth. I thought they added a few, and I don't mean this as a disparaging remark. I feel like they added some NBA guys, whereas when you have a roster full of essentially at the time with DeAndre Ayton, you had a roster that was just full of max players. Yusuf Nurkic isn't a max player, but he makes a lot of money. And the flip side to that is it's really difficult to fill out the rest of your roster with quality players. I think what they were able to do with this was acquire a few quality players. Needle movers? No, you acquired your needle mover already when you got Bradley Beal.
Right.
But you're right. The story around Phoenix is essentially the same. If their guys are healthy, they're probably fine. If two of the three guys are healthy, they're probably fine. If we're starting to get into one of the three healthy, then you have a different, then you have a different situation. But two of the teams involved in yesterday's big trade were in the Western Conference, and of course, all we think about is the Kings. So we're trying to figure out what happened yesterday mean for the Sacramento Kings, despite the fact, or including the fact that you pointed this out right at the top of the conversation, Matt. Dame Lillard's out of the West. So not only is that a detriment to the Portland Trailblazers, that's a guard spot on All-Star, on the All-Star team. I'm of the belief, and I said this earlier this week, and I feel like the more that I talked, because no one was here to respond, the more passionate I got about what I was saying. And I am absolutely of the belief that De'Aaron Fox is going to have a monster season. What we talked about earlier, coming out of that playoffs, using the Ja Morant example, I think that's De'Aaron Fox. The question of him being an NBA superstar, not a star, not an all-star, I'm talking an NBA superstar, is answered this season.
I don't know if you're going to like to hear this, but you talking by yourself alone and me talking by myself alone on the podcast, we're basically the same person then, because I'm with the same vibes.
It was only a matter of time before we turned into the same person.
I apologize to you. You should get that looked at. But I 100% agree. And that was one of my first thoughts too, is Dame's out of the West. Okay, there goes the guy that forced De'Aaron Fox to be an injury replacement, which was ridiculous. Like an all NBA guard. And ultimately, Fox didn't care that much. And you could clearly see he didn't care that much by how he acted at All-Star Weekend. He's like, yeah, I'm here. I deserve this recognition. All right, second half of the regular season time. That's what I'm worried about. It's nice to be here. This was fun. This took too long. See ya. That was basically De'Aaron Fox's entire All-Star Weekend. Like, get me on a plane. This was way too long. I had fun. But the reality is the recognition should be Ernie Johnson opening that envelope, and it's De'Aaron Fox is one of the names that he's reading off as he is there. He is him, and he is the guy that maybe could have been in the starter conversation, but didn't get there because he doesn't have the LA fan vote or the super big fan vote from massive market that puts.
He doesn't have that Austin Reeves.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have the Austin Reeves fan vote. The old Alex Caruso vote. That if he's not a starter because of that, I can live with that. But I thought last year, and I get it because Dame's phenomenal, plus how close he was to his alma mater in college and everything. Like Dame belonged at All-Star Weekend. I'm glad he won the 3-point contest. It was fun to see him. But the message that I thought the NBA sent De'Aaron Fox last season was it would have been better for you as an all-star to stat hunt and put up more numbers than it is for your team to be a winning basketball team with you at the forefront of that. And maybe it was a little bit easier for the NBA to send that message to Fox because Sabonis was absolutely going to be an all-star, but also being a center a little bit easier. That route is a little bit easier to get there. So overall, it's just optics. It doesn't matter that much, but I agree 100% with you. I think Fox is absolutely going to be an all-star submission. I'm fully expecting to be where's all-star game this year? Indiana, I think, or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
we haven't touched on. I don't think we've mentioned the 2025 All-Star game.
Golden State.
Yeah,
Yeah, which sucks, but whatever.
the
Um,
dental office. You get a free root canal when you go to the All-Star game.
Good luck getting there on time, though. Make sure if you're going to the game that tips off at 7, make sure you leave at 3:35 if you're a block away because you might not make it in time.
Yeah,
Uh,
no doubt. Good luck walking in and not dead-ending in the concourse. Yeah, good luck with that.
in the
Because, of
wind tunnel.
course, why wouldn't a concourse have a dead end right after you walk into it? Enjoy navigating the hallways. What? I ain't gonna do it.
No, I say go. Keep going.
I was just wondering what venue has hallways.
Yeah.
You're walking through hallways at the Chase Center. Where? I'm sorry, ma'am. Where is my seat? Oh, walk down this hallway, hang a right, walk up the stairs, walk down the second set of stairs. There's another hallway. Turn left, walk up those stairs. You'll sit there. Okay.
If you hit the bay, you've gone too far.
That's right. If you walk into the water like Michael Scott, turn around. Turn around.
Our sporting venue architects in the Bay Area need a little work because the Levi Stadium fiasco when that first opened up too was a mess as well. Can we get to the picture here? Because how does Sacramento build the best arena in the world? How did they do that?
How with the water right there? The water's right. You walk over and you can take your selfie by the water. How do you not build something that overlooks the water? Why did you put a hallway right there? I don't understand, dude. I thought all of the talk that Jesse and Casey did about that arena was just being funny, and it was just Golden State Warriors trolling. No, that again, don't mistake this. It's gorgeous.
It's a great arena.
It's brand new. It's beautiful. Structurally, it is ass.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely awful, and it is the worst building I've ever been in.
Parking is a nightmare too because you have to. They did the shared parking with the San Francisco Giants, and then three-quarters of the parking garages around the arena are for the Kaiser like hospitals and stuff. So you have no access to them. It's great. It's a good time. Really fun.
You very genuinely, and I did this when I went to see LL Cool J there. Get to especially if you're like traveling from get there 3 hours early.
No, 100%.
Just go eat, go drink, go do all of that stuff. Just I was like the third person in the garage. That's how early we were there. Just let me in, let me park, and I'll walk around Thrive City.
There's some pretty nice places in Thrive City.
Oh, it ain't. Look, I understand. Thrive City's a terrible name. It's better than Doco. I got you.
No.
But no, come on, man.
Doco's cool.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's because
Going
to
Doco. I'm going to Thrive City.
No, they're both dumb. Let's be clear. They're both dumb. But Doco is exceptionally worse.
You don't like the 4 letters that people like to sit in? The DO and then CO?
No, I'm fine with that. Like if you're gonna do it, you might as well. Like it's fine. But,
I'm sorry. Does Thrive City have a piglet statue that makes no sense? Does Thrive City have that? We got that because nothing says Sacramento. Like here's a piglet.
Is the piglet related to the rabbit?
I don't know.
Okay, because I'm the only person in this city who travels in and out of Sacramento without taking a picture of that dumbass rabbit.
No, you and I are the only people that don't take pictures of the rabbit because I don't understand it. I don't get it.
Great. This is awesome. Twice today, you've talked about how similar you and I have become. This is awesome. It's a great day for me.
You got to go to therapy. You got to go to therapy. Damian Barling is becoming Matt George. End of career.
No, your career is thriving. I said this earlier. I think I'm looking too old to be on TV. Like I'm starting to look older, Matt.
Hey, you know what? Let's take solace in this, Damian. Only one of us can work in Sacramento hip hop radio. You'll get there one day. You'll get there one day.
Oh man! Again, camp coming up. Well, media day coming up on Monday. Camp coming up on Tuesday. You mentioned lineups as we start to wind things down here. Is still even with Nehemias Queta being gone, Nerlens Noel being gone, and all of that? JaVale, the rotational guys being solidified. Is that still the most fascinating component of what Mike Brown can do this offseason? Mainly because it's not necessarily what do you do with Alex Lynn? What do you do with JaVale McGee? It's more, how does Trey Lyles kind of figure into all of this? And then how often is Keegan at the 3 with Sasha at the 4?
I think it's the most fascinating that Mike Brown has complete control over because he's in charge of that. But I'm most fascinated in Mike doing how can Mike get out of De'Aaron Fox what he was talking about at the end of last season? Like, I have hung my hat on every word that he said at that end of season press conference, talking about like De'Aaron Fox can be elite and here's what he needs to do to be elite. He knows what Fox has to do. Can he get not just that out of Fox? Can he get Fox to want to do that? And I think De'Aaron wants to, but wanting to and actually pulling that off, it's a major ask for anybody. And De'Aaron's already sensational as the player that he is right now. So asking an even a bigger level on top of that, that's not something that you or I can ask of him, D'Lo. That's something that only someone of Mike Brown's experience and status can ask of their star. Is, I know you're capable of this because I've coached it and seen it before. Will you give it to me? Can we commit to getting that out of you together? So I think that's the area that I'm most fascinated with Mike Brown's impact, is the impact that he can have specifically on De'Aaron getting to that superstar status. And I think it's going to be a positive one. But in terms of like what Mike Brown has his hands on, yeah, his rotations to me are going to be fascinating. He's going to take some workshopping, and I don't think there's necessarily going to be right and wrong rotations. I'm sure he's going to throw out rotations at times where we're like, yuck, this isn't working. But I think they're going to be Monty McNair is built on a roster of like 12 guys deep that are situational. If Mike needs something, he can go to a guy that maybe might not play the night before. And I believe Mike and his coaching staff will have enough of a rapport with that roster to where, hey, Alex, you might not play for a week, but when we need you, we gonna need you. So I'm interested in that.
Where are you at with Davion?
I'm high on him. I kind of had to not put him in his place. So I had to put people in their place a little bit with, and I think KC kind of feels this way a little bit, or at least I saw something on Twitter. Like, a lot of people saying if they were the Kings, they wouldn't have interest in Drew Holiday because they got Davion Mitchell here. And I clap back on that a little bit. Now, to be clear, I don't think the Sacramento Kings should make a move for Drew Holiday because it's going to cost all of their tradable assets that I think they should hold on to for a better move going forward. They just don't have to make that move right. There's a reason why all the contenders are going after Drew Holiday right now. Half of it is because they want Drew Holiday on their team. The other half is they don't want the other team to have him. Like that, I know the Golden State Warriors want Drew Holiday on their team because, that would make the Warriors really, really good and really terrifying. I think you said earlier that's a problem.
That's a problem.
If the Golden State Warriors have, and you're 100% right. But I also don't think the Golden State Warriors want another team in the West or another team, period, to have Drew Holiday, because I think Drew Holiday is one of those guys that can do about as well as you can on Steph Curry, right? So, Davion Mitchell, Drew Holiday is the absolute ceiling of ceilings for Davion Mitchell. And I think Davion defensively can be as good as Drew Holiday for sure. But Drew Holiday is also really good offensively. He averaged 19 points per game last season, shot 38% from 3-point range. He was a 2-time All-Star. Like, Davion Mitchell becoming a 2-time All-Star, I'm all for it. Davion, prove me wrong. Go get it. Like, hell yeah, sir. But offensively, he's not come even anywhere close to proving that he can be offensively what Drew Holiday is. And on top of that, Drew Holiday became an all-star and put up 19 points per game as the point guard on a team that featured Giannis, who had the ball in his hands more often than not. So Drew played his role perfectly in Milwaukee while also being an all-star caliber player. So can Davion get to that? I would love to. I'm not going to put my money on that necessarily. So I'm out on Davion being a replacement for any kind of Drew Holiday in that sense. But I do think it's going to be a breakout year for Davion. We talked about that earlier. I think Davion's going to figure things out a lot more offensively. I think he's going to be a lot more consistent offensively. And I'm so confident in his defense already that all he needs to do is have enough of an offensive impact to make it very difficult for Mike Brown to take him off the floor. Like, I want it to be a struggle sometimes for Mike Brown to go, God, I have to find a way to get Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter back in this game, but Davion is playing so damn good. I have to go small or I have to just deal with it. Like, that's the pressure that Davion should be putting on his coaching staff this year, and I think he's capable of doing that.
Yeah, he's there's a I think there's a likelihood that nationally, once we get a week or two into the season, a couple weeks into the season, there are going to be a lot of people talking about De'Aaron Fox. I just laid this out a minute ago. I've laid this out all week. It's what I think De'Aaron Fox is going to do locally, because we know that that's what De'Aaron is. Here, I think we're going to be talking a lot about Davion. I think we're going to be talking a lot about Davion, and we're probably going to be talking a lot about Sasha, one way or another, because he's such a unknown. I mean, we could watch all the EuroLeague basketball we want to. Like Sasha in the NBA, Sasha with the Sacramento Kings is a huge unknown. And he's going to garner a lot of conversation. And as you mentioned earlier, Matt, how Mike chooses to use him.
I'm waiting for the first Sasha Vezenkov offensive explosion game. Because do you remember? I don't remember who it was against. I want to say it was against like Minnesota or something. But Nemanja Bjelica in his first year as a King, he had like one of those breakout 3-point shooting games where it's just like, who is this man? Like, I think Sasha is going to have a game like that. And I hope to God it's in Sacramento so he can feel kind of that Sacramento Kings energy. And then Kings fans can go like, because he can be a constant threat to do that at any point. And I think a good game for Sasha Vezenkov is going to be 3 for 5 from 3-point range, 12 points off the bench in a Kings win. Like, that's going to be that's going to be a solid Sasha Vezenkov performance. But that first time he breaks out for 20, or if he gets hot and he starts feeling himself, and also like from things I've read about him, things I've watched about him too, I think Sasha Vezenkov is a lot better off the ball as a cutter than people give him credit for. So how can he kind of partner with off-ball screens from Sabonis, or how can he partner with backdoor screens when Fox is drawing a crowd on the other end of the floor? Like, you're right. There's so much unknown with Sasha, but it feels like such an easy translation to Sacramento's offense that you know it's going to be effective. Major question marks on the defensive end. We could say that about multiple guys, but I'm in.
We'll worry about that later. Big thanks to Matt George for spending the entire hour with us. Make sure you check out the Locked On Kings podcast and, of course, his incredible work over at ABC 10.